Hey guys, what's up? It's Evolve Lab, and I've got almost the entire team with me here today. We have Sean in the corner on the right. He's going to be leading us through Monopoly in Revit, and he's going to be showcasing the power of Dynamo. And then I have Daniel Cortez.
Hi.
Bill.
Hey guys.
Howdy.
This is like family style, holiday lab live here. I like this. We're all gonna
All we need is a
games.
Christmas tree and be,
We're sitting
and some
really
cookies.
close, and it's really hot in here.
It is. For sure. So we're gonna be playing some Monopoly today, but also educating everyone a little bit on Dynamo. So this is called edutainment, when you educate and you entertain at the same time.
See, it's billable, is what you can say.
Yeah, it's billable.
This is billable hours. Totally. If your boss comes by and he's like, "What are you doing?" You're like, "I'm learning about Dynamo."
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So with that, we're going to turn it over to Sean. Sean has been mastering this Monopoly for Dynamo, which I've been super impressed with. And we thought it would be a good like holiday time game for us to play. So Sean is going to be showing us how Dynamo and Monopoly synergistically work together. So Sean, the floor is yours, sir.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. So yeah, this was a fun idea that so I decided to jump in actually when I first met Bill and our old partner Mark, and we're like, we could do this. We could build Monopoly in Revit. So why would you do this? So there's a lot of similarities here. As you can see, the boards just look the same. So, we have this building information model. Well, that's exactly, I think, what a Monopoly board is. You have this 3D model of elements. They all hold these certain attributes, are parameters, and it's really just a big database. And this Monopoly database happens to be super parametric. So obviously you need a way to build these relationships and have it be able to adapt to changes and everything. So that's exactly what we did in Revit, using all Revit elements. So like the properties will be rooms and stuff. We have generic models for all the elements and the houses, so all native Revit stuff.
Well, awesome.
So the other thing is too, why would you do this? So it's really funny to me. I was actually working last week with some SPACMA stuff, and this Monopoly idea was in my head, and I'm like, wait a minute, these tables I'm doing all this lookup stuff really kind of looks like the tables that are in these property cards for Monopoly. So there's just a lot of similarities there on how we're kind of retrieving information and using that information and using it somewhere. So not only does SPACMA have tables, obviously ASHRAE has tables that kind of looks familiar, not quite as familiar as the last one. But so it's this idea of having tables in a database. And then I thought this was funny too, just we're always bombarded with code, right? So code's kind of the first thing that drives everything. So I went in and just how the rules of Monopoly are written versus how the code is written for ASHRAE, for example, and obviously there's other sources of code. It's really similar. So really what we're doing is we're taking these rules and turning it into if statements and programs. And that's pretty much the same thing we're doing on a daily basis, no matter what. If you're an architect, engineer, contractor, it's a lot of just reading rules and then turn them into if statements to get to automation. So my inspiration really came from, I am an engineer, so going through school I did a lot of Excel and I got really good at Excel, and then I stumbled upon this from Andrew, and he actually built Excel, or Monopoly in Excel, and I never got good enough at Excel to do it, but then I realized I was good enough at Dynamo to do it, so that's really where the inspiration came from. So let's hop in here. So we're actually going to start off, so I wanted this to be pretty educational. So we are going to look at kind of setting up the project and really starting where Dynamo, kind of going through the steps of Dynamo, like geometry and everything. So you guys got any questions or anything?
You're going to take us through this workflow right now on step-by-step how you came about through it?
Yeah. So we're going to start up on kind of setting up the project, right? So we're going to show how we can kind of streamline that and start with, here, I'll hop right into it.
Also, just to reiterate,
right.
We also like a lot of chatter in the chat box. So if you guys have questions, thoughts, comments, that is there for you guys. Maybe to kick us off, I'm curious, like, who's all using Dynamo currently at their firm? So while Sean's kind of walking us through this, why don't you guys let us know if you guys are using Dynamo, if you're not using Dynamo, and what you're thinking of it.
And then on top of that, just to break up the fun a little bit, what's your favorite board game?
Yes, I like that.
There you go.
So, are you using Dynamo? What are you using it for? And what's your favorite board game?
Yes. And
Can I say mine real quick?
yes.
Yeah.
Blockus. It's not Monopoly. So I will build that at some point, I hope.
Last night I took the boys and we were playing the new version of Fireball Island, which was awesome. I don't know if anybody ever played that in the 80s, but it's played with marbles and you like roll the marbles down. They like run over people. It was totally a blast. Really cool. It would be a really cool model to do in Revit though, because it's all these hills and stuff. It'd be awesome.
Definitely. Daniel, what's your favorite board game?
I like backgammon.
Like backgammon?
Yeah.
I think I like Monopoly.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm a Monopoly
Oh,
person. I like
you
Monopoly.
guys.
I like money.
I was just playing Monopoly on Saturday with my kiddos. It was a lot of
Am
fun.
I the only heavy board gamer in here? Because like I'm gonna say like I don't know. Everybody ever heard of Splendor?
No.
Or have you heard of Settlers of Catan?
What was the one that you and I played?
That was Splendor.
That was Splendor. That
Yeah,
was fun.
Bill rocked it. He whipped me on it.
This is a good game. I liked it.
Yeah.
Anthony Hartwood says Stellar is his favorite game.
Stellar. There you go. We were playing Photosynthesis last night. That's
Either,
a new one.
I think Anthony is at Stellar. They're one of our
Oh.
friends and clients,
Look,
and,
you
and I think they're
never
saying
know.
they're using Dynamo. He's responding to that.
Oh.
So shout out to
You
Anthony.
know,
Anthony, what's your favorite board game? Put it in the chat window there. We want to know what your favorite board game is. And with that, Sean, take us through. Keep going, man.
Yeah,
All right, guys, ready? So we're going to start off with the most basic thing that Dynamo is good for. Well, where it really started, right? So you see all this parametric geometry and stuff. Not really where I started, but then I kind of really learned the power of geometry, so that's where we're going to start. So why is this so powerful? So, of course, you have a point, right? So if we run this, here, we'll even go to automatic. If we run this, we see this point right here, right? And then with sliders and stuff, we can move these points around, right?
Sweet.
Like it.
So then if we decide that we can start kind of, and this is kind of how I build, so using Revit, building families, really helped me out on building parametric stuff in general. So really that's kind of what this is doing here. But if this was Revit, like this would be a plane, this would be a plane, this would be a plane, and these two would be a plane. But of course we don't have that. So instead we kind of did a list of points. So right now these don't look like anything, right? Just a bunch of points out in space. But then from points, we can start to do lines. So we can go up here into this poly curve, and now we have lines. So that's kind of the next step. So first points, then lines. And then from there, we can get surfaces. So let me unpreview this one. And now we have this surface. Now we can mirror these surfaces. And now we got our Monopoly house.
Whoa.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And just for clarification, Sean, you're using a code block right now, so you could, in theory, have like your polyline node. You could have your
Yeah, of course up here, right? Polyline.
Yep. But you're using a code block. Can you talk about like why to use a code block versus say the nodes?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm kind of OCD and kind of really need things to be simple and nice flowing. So for me, with all the spaghetti everywhere, I get kind of really confused. So for me, I found using code block really helps me stay organized.
I like it.
And you can kind of, there's some spots in the workflow we'll show where I didn't use a lot of code block. And you can see how quickly it can get really messy. So for example, all of these lines would have to be 4 of these without code block, because these are all points, right?
Yep.
So then we got our house, and then we extrude. So just like you would in a 3D CAD model, you can start building geometry. And then, of course, we got a little OB unit, but there's our little chimney. Here, let's go to the chimney real quick.
Gotta have the chimney on there.
So there's our chimney. It's just a simple cylinder. But yeah, we got our house. So now, of course, we want to get this into Revit, right? So I'm pretty sure this node's new to 2.0. Right now I'm in 2.0. We're gonna go back to 3.1 when we play the game, but
1.3.
1.3.
1.3, yes. So I'm gonna do it manually. It's sometimes you don't necessarily want to be in automatic, especially with sending a bunch of stuff to Revit. But here we can do this, and if we hit run and go back to our Revit project, go down to families. was it generic model, I believe.
There it is.
And there's our and this is cool. So I didn't know you could do this. So we've had conversations with internally about how you can get geometry into Revit from Dynamo and other things, and actually be able to apply parameters. So this will let you do that. So there's our house, and you can see it's actually a real generic model. So you can add parameters and everything. It's not what is the term for the ones that are just stagnant? You can't even really move them around and add parameters.
Direct shape.
Yeah, so it's not direct shape. It's an actual. Go down to coordination. Here, let's go to 3D view.
Get your doghouse. There you go.
So there it is, right? Pretty, right?
That's awesome.
Then if we go here, I think silly mechanicals, right? Discipline. Of course, we open this up, then we can add parameters and everything like normal.
Material.
And so we did that, a little bit of manipulation for the hotels and everything. So now let's move on and talk about maybe building the board. So we're just going to delete that out right now.
So just as an application, though, for this, I mean, we built a little Monopoly house, but if someone wanted to, they could build a parametric computational form, be in a building or a space or a facade, and then they could make that as real Revit geometry from Dynamo.
Yep.
Or it could be for
Yeah, so I'm really excited to explore that a little bit more, especially like adding connectors and stuff. So I actually just got that into Revit for the first time recently, so I'm really excited to see other implications that come out of that. I wanted to there's a lot of files out there, so maybe you have a manufacturing file that's in STA format. You could import that in and essentially maybe just apply that and then add your parameters, so you're not stuck with all those family parameters.
It's good stuff.
It's one thing that I'm excited about. So then we talk about the board, and this is kind of where this really reminds me of our good friends over at TestFit, the Monopoly board kind of problem. So just think about it, scaling it up on that scale. But at the same point, just like the house, we have these 4 corner points. So that would be kind of our, right, the corners of our board. So that's one of them. Here's the list of 4 points. You can go to automatic here until we start adding the stuff. So there's our 4 corner points, and with a slider, again, you can really, move these in and out, and then everything else will follow. So pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
So then go from there. Now we can start making lines just like we did the house, and now we have that outer boundary of what will essentially be our board, right? And then with a little offset and some work, we now had the inside line. I did go and measure the ratio to see what that was. It's a fun little problem, even with trigonometry, if you think about it here too. So you have this length. So that's another way to do it. So in here, you can see it's a lot of getting points and moving them on the inside. So there's some math all in here too. The next step then would be to add our division lines. Mm-hmm. So now, of course, just counting how many spaces there are, there's our division lines. Next step would be, now we kind of want, so if we have these lines and everything, we can start to make rooms and stuff. So if we just get a point in the center of these closed polygons, then we can essentially make a room once we have walls. So that's what this part is. So there's all of our 40 spaces. Except, of course, we have that annoying little jail space over here.
Yep.
So that one, of course, always gives a little bit of trouble. So there it is down there. With a little bit of, again, some math and trigonometry stuff, you're able to get that point and that space. And then down here, we're just combining all that stuff together to make walls. And we're combining the room points plus the cell center, right? So that's this point right here for the jail. By the way, for the properties, there are 40 properties in Monopoly. So we are doing 0 through 39 is the regular properties, and then we added a property 40 for the jail. And of course, with coding, you start it, so that's why it's not 1 through 40. Instead, it's 0 through 40.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Zach Chrono.
So now we have all
You
these
have
lines
4
and stuff.
digits
We
here.
can start to make Revit stuff. So if we unfreeze these,
I like that.
and there's a whole bunch of stuff you can make, right? So unfreeze. So here we're just making floor plan by outline. Just pick your floor type and your level. Here we're going to make all the walls from all those curves. And as you can see, it's really short. I didn't really want to build really tall walls, but of course, if you have different levels, you could tell it wall from level and the level above. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. And then of course here we can even make rooms. So these are all native out-of-the-box Revit nodes. And now we have, oops, our Revit board ready to go.
Nice.
If we go down here to schedules, we can, so we'd have to make one real quick. Because I think I did that in a script.
Now, Sean, when you're building all these, are you using any special packages or anything, packets that you're using, or is this pretty much native Dynamo stuff that you're running with?
This is all native Dynamo stuff, I think, to do it. I'm trying to think. I used some Python later to like delete stuff. But mostly all native Dynamo nodes. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of package stuff, and that kind of leads into the shared parameters port. So here we're going to add our shared parameters. This is always really annoying, right? So if you want to get to automation, you really need a lot of shared parameters. So the whole idea here is to automate this. And what's also nice is that Excel file. Here, let me, one that you need to definitely have is a shared parameters file loaded. So we're going to do that real quick. Create. And we'll call Monopoly 2. Just so we don't overwrite the next one. So now that we have this, we can easily add our shared parameters through Dynamo. What's cool about this is here is our link to our Revit database. It will open up just by having that. As you can see from, so this all came in from that gentleman Andrews who made, so he already did the legwork for us. So now we're really importing all this data in. So for the properties and the shared parameters, we literally just took these headers right here and then pushed those into our shared parameters right here.
Nice.
So now,
So this is a little bit of Excel interoperability with Revit.
right, yeah. So anytime, I really say, right, if you have an Excel, you can get into Revit now, no problem.
Yeah.
And even shared parameters and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then also for the application, to your point of like test fitting, like this is a Monopoly board, but you could use this for space planning and test fitting like an existing building.
Right. Yeah. And again, back to the parametric idea too. You know, with those sliders, that board could be any size. So like, it's kind of cool. It all just kind of adapts.
That's great.
Yeah, and you're tying it to rooms right now, but that data can go into areas or something else that we're pumping that.
Yeah. Like for example, I've used it for spaces, and we'll get into more about like putting data into families. So this is really, first you have to get the shared parameters in there, right?
Yep.
So now we can go to another really cool thing that you can do with Dynamo is start making schedules. So maybe you have a whole bunch of air handler units and you need the same schedule, but just the filters are different. So you're able to really make schedules automatically with Dynamo as well. And this is just some examples. You can also make work sets. I mean, the list goes on and on of just what you can automate, create, especially in the project setup phase. And you can see it all, it's running pretty quick. So that's already done, and now we have our schedule. And with just one little mode down here, we can add filters if we wanted to. And then with some Python, you can get all the formatting and everything too.
Sweet.
So now we have our property schedule, but of course it's blank. So now the next step would be to import all this data, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is that Excel import. So again, right, reading from Excel, these are all of our sheet names. So we're not just getting the properties, we're also getting the community chest and chance elements. Interesting thing here that happens, here I'll run it real quick, is we are removing those headers from that list, and we're left with all of the parameters. Then once you transpose that, it's built in a way that then it kind of looks more like Excel. So it's just a little weird thing that you just kind of got to get used to.
Yeah, so list transpose, for those that don't know, if you're familiar with Grasshopper, that's the same as flip matrix, and that basically makes your rows columns and your columns rows.
Yeah.
Right, Sean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just how it pulls it in. So you could set up your data in Excel. I think most of us are used to kind of this setup.
Yeah.
Like essentially you could transpose the Excel table too.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of how your data is, but you have that available to really manipulate lists and get them to how you want them. And then it's just a matter of setting all of our parameters. And you can see this kind of goes back to why I use code blocks and where I really started using code blocks. Because if you do a set parameter by name, you just have to have a whole bunch of these, and it'd be just a lot of space and a lot of wires crossing. So there's 15 of these essentially. So you'd have to have 15 of these running down with wires all crossing.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's just a lot cleaner, I think. So yeah, that's the data from Excel. And here, of course, we had this other data too. So if we go down, this is actually related to our community chest table and our chance table. So if we wanted to fill that out right here, that's where you'd get these. So this is just indexes again. So 0 is properties, community chest is 1, chance is 2.
Nice. Like it. Maybe this is a good time too. You can keep going, Sean, but I'm curious. Again, chat window, would love to know who's in the architecture space versus mechanical plumbing versus electrical versus manufacturing. Why don't you guys blow up the chat window there and let us know which industry or which discipline you guys are in. That would be awesome.
Also see some of the games coming through. We got Risk and Combs of Dunshire out there, and see anybody else write anything in. Resistance. There you go. Looks like that's a good one.
It is good.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna hop on over into this file. So I did add, and unfortunately you can't kind of automatically do it, but we did add, we're gonna actually show you how to add kind of families into the job now. Yeah, I did have to add the roster image. I haven't figured out a way to automate that one yet.
Next week. That's next week.
Yeah. So we have this nice 3D view of it also.
Sean, is this a bitmap like applied, or how did you get the image of the Monopoly board assigned to your geometry?
So it's just an image, a decal really.
Oh, I gotcha. That's what he was saying.
Yeah. So then you just you just stretch it out to match your floor plan.
Gotcha.
I thought about doing it more, but the other thing here is too to try to keep the coding as short as possible, right? You start adding all these different layers. And then, of course, it starts running a little bit slower, so.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
But yeah, it could be done. 3D text and everything, so it'd be fun to even add some more bells and whistles to it.
It's good.
All right, so the next thing we're gonna look at is like placing families and stuff. So again, it kind of uses points and everything. And now I'm going back to Dynamo. I was having some trouble with Dynamo 2.0, so now I'm going back to Dynamo 1.1 for the remainder of everything. Maybe let's do this over here. So this one's pretty cool, and we'll go to automatic right here. Thinking a little bit.
Always that donut of destiny.
While that's thinking, I'd like to know, Brian Juge, where do you buy your shirts at?
So every week during you know, after Christmas and New Year's and all that, I always wear my Hawaiian shirts. This particular one was given to me. Now I get people to buy them for me.
Nice.
So my father-in-law picked this up from Hawaii. So I don't have to go out of my way anymore. This is one of my tamer ones, I'd say.
That's tame?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So no, it's
We
only
couldn't
one
get it
time
to
a year.
change for this,
only
so.
one time a year.
Alright.
Wow, there we go. So now we've got the cards in there, Sean. That looks awesome.
Yeah, so this is kind of to show you, I wanted to just kind of show you some ways that I think about placing families and kind of moving them around and everything. So right here, we're able to get a list of a whole bunch of different points. And if you notice, if we change the lacing here to shortest, then we get a totally different kind of outcome right here. If we go to longest, we get a different outcome. And then if we go to lacing cross product, then you get these grid of points. And if you're to add a Z element here, you'd actually get like a lattice of points.
Can you explain that a little bit more, the lacing, the shortest, the longest, and how that works?
Yeah, here, let's look at the output again. So if you look at this, so we have 7. So what this is saying, it's saying, okay, we're going to start at 0, then we're going to go to 14, and we're going to do it in 7 steps. This one's saying we're going to start at 0, we're going to go to 6, and we're going to do it in 3 steps. So if you look at here, we go 0, 3, 6. 0, 3, 6. And then if you multiply 7 times 3, you get the 21. So when you're starting to learn Dynamo, especially with lacing and list and managing your list, it's really good to pay attention to this bottom number and see if that makes sense with what you're trying to do. It's a real good indicator. If this is off, then you know something's off. So now if we go to lacing and go to longest, you notice we only have 7. So now it took only the first one out of this list and applied it to all 7 in this list. And then it keeps going on the last list. So that's why you get these ones in a row. Kind of confusing still?
No, I think it's good. Mark showed me this with the cross product, especially for like stacking. It's a super advantageous way to be able to build geometry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the lacing is like super important in that sense.
Yeah, and it's making grid points. So I use grid points all the time for like the placing diffusers and lights and that type of thing.
Oh,
so.
Yeah, some really good applications.
Mm-hmm. So what's cool too is if we go back and do it back to cross product. So now we have the 7 times 3 to get us the 21. So now we're going to translate this geometry, because if we didn't have this, then they would just be right smack dab in the middle. So it's kind of cool is you can just start to see how you can move this stuff around. So of course this could be a parametric and not doing it necessarily by hand, but this can really go anywhere. Wherever you used to set up your pieces growing up as a kid.
Throw them in a bag.
That's right.
And then of course, so then I wanted to show kind of, this is the exact same idea, except done just a little bit different. And this reminds me of going back to like our college algebra, where it used to be like if you had, you know, the parametric function and you wanted to shift it up the y, then you would add like the plus b. You guys follow me? Like mx plus b, add that y to move the graph up. So that's really what we're doing here. So rather than geometry translate, we're just adding that step inside of the function in here. So you can really, there's a lot of many ways. That's why I was just trying to show here is there's a lot of different ways that you can go about manipulating and moving geometry.
I like it.
And then of course, right, these can move there.
Is there
So then the whole idea too is now that we have this family, we set all those to 12, and now you see this a lot where we set a family, now we want to apply parameters. So here we're just putting a parameter in here called bank point, and that's really going to be used for like if you have a house on a property and then you want to sell that property, then this will become our point to put this house back into its location.
So each one of those houses being tracked is being known where it's being placed in the geometry.
Right, it knows where it's being placed, and if we go in here and look at the parameters now, we see that we applied this point parameter to, right, and this could be anything. So like if you have a room, right, and you want to put that room number in there, that's where you could.
Yeah.
So
Piece of furniture or something like that.
Yeah, another
Exact
application I've seen for
furniture.
this is like in the manufacturing space when you need to have like a unique ID for each panel or for curtain wall elements for manufacturing fabrication. All of those need to have like a unique ID for that purposes, and a lot of times it's based on its spatial location, its XYZ location, and so that could be another good application is in the manufacturing space of modeling this geometry.
Yeah, another we're on this too. So this is, it comes out, so you always kind of want to look at what you are dealing with. So right here we're dealing with a point. So if I were to, we can try to break it, why not? If I were to do this, you see that I get an error right here. Because it doesn't want that. This parameter is text. So there's ways to manipulate an object to string. You can go number to string and string to number.
Yeah, these are really critical for like data flow and Dynamo, making sure that you're feeding
Right.
the right kind of information to the nodes.
So you always kind of want to look at like what, and even with these imports, like this is looking for a point. So if I were to try to do the string into here, I would get an error, and then they all disappear.
That's a really good.
So just really paying attention to what the nodes are looking for. And what's kind of cool is if you hover over them, it usually shows you, what it's looking for.
That's a really good tip there to because I'm going in trying to learn this, and it's what is this string for? What do I need this? How does it work? Having that in there, and maybe some of you guys out there have questions like that, and then you have your struggles, and put that in the chat. Write out, hey, I'm having struggle with the same thing. Is there different ways of manipulating the data, like Sean is showing us on here? Hey, there's it looks like 3 different ways of listing the same amount of ways. How to do the houses, the hotels, and the cards of chance in there.
Yep, that's good. Yeah, so if you guys have questions or comments on that, feel free to throw them in the chat there.
So now the next idea is to do this kind of stacking of the cards. So of our chance cards, and we go to the 3D view. You can see that there's actually 15 cards here stacked up, ready to go. And what's kind of cool is there's shuffle and stuff. Well, you can actually shuffle these cards, right? So there's a script that could shuffle these cards if you wanted to.
Way.
No.
That is awesome.
So blackjack's on my things to do list too.
That is incredible.
But so how we're doing this here is, right, so we have this, I'm gonna have to go, so I found something weird in Dynamo that didn't like me being in this 3D view, and I don't know if it's on realistic view or what's going on there, but it's a shame kind of. But now so we're moving these around on our X and Y points right here to kind of get the spot, but then now we're adding this Z location, and notice we're only at lacing longest. So now we're saying for every X and Y, give me this Z. So we have one input, 15 inputs because the indices starts at 0.
Yeah.
I guess it should be 15. Ooh. Now, see, and now of course a good gut check again is right there. And I know that because I know Monopoly needs 15 different cards.
He's mastered Monopoly.
So then you can see, and this is just this 15 divided by 12, so the thickness of these is 1 inch. And so then and you could even pull that parameter out of the family and be like, what is this parameter, and put that in here instead of this number to make it even more parametric. But, right, so it's just 1 inch. So this is saying, all right, start at 0, go 1 inch increments, and we want 15 of them. And then we get all of our cards stacked. So then another cool idea is that happens all the time is having to rotate families, right? So I know rotating is really weird in Revit, where I couldn't rotate both these simultaneously, right? Doesn't it do something really weird? So it does that, right? That's no good.
Yeah.
With this though, you could rotate as many elements as you want about their own center. So if we did 50 here, then you can see this turned a little bit. So there's ways too to get like the vector location of a family and then turn it to wherever you need it to be. So you can get like the direction of a wall and turn stuff that direction for like outlets, doors, stuff like that.
That's awesome. So like this is what I always talk about as far as like bending the rules of Revit, right? So like it's like the Neo like from the Matrix when he's trying to bend the spoon. Like you can't do that in reality in Revit, but with Dynamo, it allows you to kind of bend the rules of reality and allow you to do something that doesn't natively exist in Revit. There is no spoon.
So then the other nice thing about this too is like when after you're done setting a family, again, we're going over here and now we're setting all these parameters. And again, this is all coming from our Excel file. So again, we're getting the rest so we don't have those headers, transposing it, and then just applying a whole bunch of parameters. So right, really long time to set this all up manually, but as you can see, pretty quickly you can fly right through it once you have the rules in place.
Yeah, and one of those great things that you're showing us is that, you know, you've built this data set off of something that someone else has already done. So as you're going through and you're learning Dynamo and you're learning all these aspects in here, your knowledge is just going to be compounded every single time something comes out, or when someone else has built something else. That this whole community behind it is really, we're all standing on the backs of giants here.
Yep. Sorry, you guys ready to play a little bit?
Yeah.
That's what I'm here for.
Now, do we have any dice, Sean?
Yeah, we do have dice. So they're inside the script.
Sweet.
Let me pull this out. Still getting used to 19, and that's my dog. Sorry.
Yes, he's playing. Well, you picked your piece. You've got the little dog.
Yeah, he's a little mad. So I didn't do pieces. I want to eventually. I just kind of ran out of time, so we have these generic things, but we did do something pretty cool. So let's get that started up. So manage. So the other thing I wanted to point out is Dynamo Player. So this is a nice way to get people that don't really know Dynamo on your team to be able to use it in a simpler form. So whatever folder you're in, right here is what's going to show. So we actually want to go to game setup for the first one, and then have this reset game. Might bark at me and want me to close Dynamo. So now, if you combined Dynamo Player with a wonderful package called Data Shapes, you can really have a lot of options on user interface and how it's what you want from the user. And using Data Shapes, you can do it mid-script, which was absolutely necessary to do it for Monopoly. So the first thing we want to do is select the number of players.
Sean, when you say mid-script, so you're running the script, but it's updating it in real time. So like it's running the script, but you're updating the number of players.
Right. So and like it depends on So the next UI that's going to pop up. So we want 4 players. The next UI that's going to pop up depends on how many players we picked, and that's something that you couldn't have done with Dynamo Player.
Incredible. That's awesome.
So there's a few applications and workflows where like a designer needs to make a decision or something. So what we're going to do now is you have a file path. So this could be an Excel sheet, right? Any type of file. For this case, it's saying, I believe it's right. Yeah, pick your pick. So we're going to go to our player pictures.
Oh, nice.
We'll start with Bill.
It's a great picture.
It is a great picture.
Then we'll go, okay. Player 2 will pick the pick. And then along with the name, player 4, Daniel, you're there, right?
Yep.
And so now we have, it's off a little bit. Now we have our thing set up with all of our names. Our starting money is all what it should be. We have no jails. No one is in jail. We have no railroads, utilities, and our position is all 0. Which technically should be in here, but hey. So now we're ready to start playing the game, right?
Yep.
How are we doing on time?
We got 18 minutes.
Nice. So let's play maybe a couple rounds, and then we can dive in and look at the code a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if we mentioned this, but this is actually, we're going to play a full game of Monopoly. It's going to be about 6 hours of Monopoly that we're going to live stream.
Billable.
So it runs a little bit quicker out of Dynamo Player. Of course, you could do running the scripts out of Dynamo Player, but just for time's sake, I'm going to just open up Dynamo natively and run it out of that. And that way we can look at the code a little bit too.
Do we have any questions that are coming up?
Travis said he's been learning by deconstructing others' Dynamo graphs, but he needs to learn more about the basics of Dynamo.
Yeah.
About what?
About the basics of Dynamo. Is there some good places, Sean, that people can use or learn the basics of Dynamo?
Yeah, so I mean, there's the primer. There's tons of videos online from a whole bunch of people. We have a lot of good videos. It's really just doing it, and I'd say starting small. You know, one of my first big successes was just getting, and I was so ecstatic about it, is just getting able to change room names. So once from there, I realized, oh, I can change any parameter. And then, of course, I stumbled with those input things I was talking about earlier. So
That's good. People are also saying like the code blocks are super helpful for setting values. I've always done it like with the nodes, and so I've really been learning a lot from Sean as far as like how to utilize the code blocks for a lot of this stuff, for neatly graphing this out. It's really good.
yeah, so here's the biggest script in the whole thing. And you can imagine if this wasn't code blocks, how messy this would be.
Yeah.
I've
So again, it helps me really keep organized.
True.
So yeah, I'll go over the script, big picture real quick, and then we can run it. So the whole idea here is we set all these different elements, right? So we have our turn tracker. All right, so these are our tokens. Here we have, notice these are all family types. So we can get all the elements of any family type that we want. Here's our turn tracker. So this is actually an annotation. That's pretty cool because we're able to manipulate an annotation. So you think about how you can link data to annotations too. There's a lot of potential there. Here we use our rooms for the properties. So this is a category rather than a family type, and we're able to get all elements of that category. Here's our chance cards, our houses, and our dice. So kind of the first step is that like pre-roll question, right? So first thing that we're doing, and here I go through and I get the person's name and I match it up with the turn tracker. It's probably really confusing you guys, but here we have our turn number. So here's our turn tracker with the number. So every time we roll, let me freeze this stuff so it doesn't take a while. So every time you roll the dice, this turn tracker will go up. So Bill's going to roll. Ooh, I have to unfreeze these, sorry.
So explain a little bit about freezing there and how that works and why that's valuable.
Yeah, so freezing, if I don't want the script to really run long or I'm troubleshooting a different area, freezing kind of stops it. It doesn't just necessarily stop it, I believe it holds the values too. So you could freeze downstream and still have those values. So yeah, it's really useful for troubleshooting and stuff like that. So now he landed on Connecticut Avenue. So now it's asking, do you want to buy the property or do you not want to buy the property?
Definitely
So
buy
of course
the
Bill's
property.
going to buy the property, right, Bill?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Oh, definitely buying the property.
Now, do we got the real rules? If he doesn't buy it, it goes up for auction?
I've not got the auction down yet. The auction's like the last big thing that I need to work on. It's kind of hard because it's a loop, right? And Dynamo's not that good at loops, so you don't know when the person's necessarily going to stop, so you don't know how many turns to go through. One way to do it is just keep hitting run, and then just like this turn tracker's doing, you can manipulate, kind of have a yes or no parameter there if like the person's out or not. So it's just going to loop through until all people are out except one, then that person wins that auction.
It's good.
So it uses all the same principles using as this one. So now as you can see, our turn tracker number went up to 2.
My turn.
Right?
Just in case anyone didn't know.
So let's maybe let's just try to fire some things like get somebody in trouble. So who's the next player? Let's figure out. Here, so I'm gonna cheat. So here's our dice.
So am I not getting a turn?
So you can see, so we're doing a random number through 0.5 and 6.5. Can you guys tell me why I did 0.5, 6.5? Do you see the logic?
No.
It has to do with this math rounding, right? So it's gonna round, because if I didn't have the math round on there, then it would just be, it's like a decimal number.
How come you can't use an integer?
So that's kind of what we're doing, is turning it into an integer.
Okay. But why do we need to round it? I still don't understand that.
Here, let's freeze this so we don't manipulate the game at all. So see how this is between 9.1? So then we want to do the math round. And now we'll get a 1. But the problem is, if we have right here, like, what would be a possibility if we didn't do the 1.5, right? So these are just little things that you kind of want to think about, and like just think about stuff that like get you in trouble. Well, then we have a dice of 0, and that's not possible. Or again, if we were to have the 6.51, then we'd have 7, and we had to go past 6 to keep it balanced. Does that make sense, Bill?
I still don't understand why, but I understand what you're doing, but I don't understand why the rounding's happening. I don't know why we couldn't use integers, but I may just not be getting it.
Maybe there is a math. I mean, it uses numbers. This is kind of how this node works, I think. So maybe there is a node in here that would be just integers.
Maybe if there's someone else out there that might have the answer, if they could chime in.
It'd be good.
Explain it to Bill.
Explain to me so my little brain can understand it.
And me.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going though. Let's see whose turns next.
Yeah. So what I'm gonna do, because if I don't close this out, so when you run it with Dynamo Player, every time you run it, you'd get new dices. If we were to run it now, you can see the same dice numbers are gonna keep on popping up.
There's one way to cheat.
Yep.
So let's have some fun and make someone roll doubles and put them in jail.
That's a lot of
That's
doubles.
me.
Are you up next?
I'm up next. I don't think I do well in jail, but
That's alright, you're
that's
gonna
fine.
roll 3 times. Hopefully he's got the word in it.
Let me unfreeze this. Oops. So yeah, everything downstream freezes too, by the way. So, and then we can look at, once we get her in jail, we can look at the logic here. Oh, Judge, you.
Wouldn't be my first time. Yes, buy.
So of course you're gonna buy it.
Yep.
Now notice too that we're putting, you guys are getting moved to these positions too.
That's wonderful.
So we go look. I feel like we should just look at all these little pieces in the code. We got about 10 minutes, yeah?
Yes.
So if we go to turn tracker now, notice his thing's still up, and now notice double count went to 1. So if he rolls doubles again, you're having some good properties there, bud.
Yep, well you got 6, so that's good. You didn't put me on 7, so I'm happy with that.
So notice his turn tracker went up again, and it's still his turn. And somehow he rolled doubles again.
Directly to jail.
And there you are. You're in jail.
I'll call your wife.
One phone call. Bill.
I don't have any bond money, sorry.
So as you can see, your jail count now is up to 3. So this is going to track how many turns you're in jail that you don't want to get out. In our position, remember the jail position is that extra 40 spot. So again, we go up here. This one's 39.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's the 40th spot on the board.
This one's 0.
Okay.
And this is 40. I'm gonna bring it. We're cheating here a lot. I'm gonna bring it back to your turn so we can look at the differences now that you're in jail. So now that you're in jail, this different UI pops up because of the different situation. So you can either say pay $50 to get out, or you can try to roll doubles. What do you want to do, bud?
I'm gonna pay. It's too early in the game. If you're all the
So he's gonna pay the money. Here, we're gonna cheat, maybe change the dice.
Put me on. Put a 7 on there. That should be 3 and 7. That should get you chance or something like that.
Actually, it's got mad at me. It's telling me to do it mid-script. Let me do this. Should put you on 6, I think, because it's storing that data.
Gotcha.
So now you've landed on this, and of course you want to buy it, right?
Yes.
So there you are on that. And then every time, so let's go back. And this time we're going to give you a get out of jail free card. So of course you only usually get this through landing on chance. We're just going to give it to you. And now if you see a different UI pops up.
Oh, nice.
And didn't put you there. Bummer.
Did not roll.
Something happened.
Something broke.
But let's go here. So I wanted to kind of show you how this is working, these if statements, because this is pretty cool, just how it works, and I think it can be used a lot of different places. So now we know kind of those different UIs and what happens. Let's kind of look at how it's doing it. So the first idea is to get all the players, right? And then we're going to get the turn tracker, and we're going to get the player number. And now we're going to, this is pretty much like doing that 0 thing. So now we're saying out of the players, get that player number. So that gets us just our player. The other thing we're doing, because we have to use this down the road, is getting all the other players. And we're doing that a little bit differently. So you could have done this up here with get item at index, but this is a little bit shorter. But here we're saying remove item at index. So now we only remove that one player. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's really smart how you set that up.
Yeah, so it's ways to really, I use this all the time. So it's usually some type of test, and then get that. So let's do this. Daniel, you're up. So you can see we had this one here, and of course you have to open that up. And notice we got the element. We didn't get their name. We went all the way back up to this master list to get that element. And then we're going to open up that element again. So now we have player here, and this are our other players, of course, right? Now notice that this is player, and now we're getting his name here. So if we do this, let's hit back so it just is consistent. That's a good thing to know too, by the way. Anytime you hit back, and if you do this drop down, you can see you can go back to as many Dynamo scripts as you ran. So just, if something's messed up, don't freak out yet.
So Sean, while you're doing that, one of the questions we have is, where's the syntax guide for design script, similar to Revit API docs?
I actually found something really cool recently. Look up this Dynamo language guide, and this thing has a lot more covering. Has a whole bunch of design script stuff in it.
Do you know
I reference this quite a bit.
Do you know who put that together?
I'm not 100% sure. I think I got off the Dynamo Primer website. One of the official Dynamos. But yeah, functions, math, looping, supposedly it's possible. Surfaces. So this is kind of a lot of stuff that you can see that we're covering. So yeah, for much more in-depth spot, go here. And then maybe even if you're really trying to learn, like, we're going to give these scripts away. So I really encourage you guys to go in and explore them for yourselves. That's the whole idea here, was just because we all know the rules of Monopoly, Sometimes I find when I've been in other talks, I don't necessarily know electrical language or I don't know architecture language. And I've had people that I go over their heads really quick with like mechanical language. So this was just a fun way to show all these different things in a way that just like everyone understands, and that's pretty simple.
That's good. Andy was also asking what happens when there are more turns than players. Would you get an index error?
No, so it's all built in here not to let that happen. So let me go, maybe in these last 3 minutes we can just go, I can give you an overview, and then anyone that's watching or wants to explore more, you can go into more details. So after we got the space, we're able to pull all these parameters, and then our first check to see if the guy's in jail. So then we have these booleans down here. So if in jail equals false, then this UI doesn't turn on. Because this is just our regular UAI. It just says roll dice.
This is good.
Right?
So you have a series of if-then statements to make sure to kind of quality check the script to make sure it doesn't break, which we do with like families and other things as well.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, and it's kind of hard. It's hard to catch them all at first, right? So this one, right? So this boolean for this message is if he's in jail is equal to true, and he does not, his get out jail free card is equal to 0. Then it's going to give you this message. If he's in jail and his free card is greater than 0, then it's going to give you this message.
That's good.
And then all these converge in here to then only get the 1. So you get empty list. So here here's where I like to do this all indices of true. So I use all indices of whatever all the time. So here we're looking at all indices of true. And of course, only one of these is going to be true. Because at any single time, if this one's true, these two are false. So we're only looking for that one input, and then we get the input, whatever came out of it.
That's good.
So in this case, I don't know why I did that one. Something's a little off there. This is probably why here.
Sanders, she's cheating again.
Yeah.
Right, so now we got this user AI, and now we're able to make other decisions. So here we're gonna, of course, the math thing is a thing. We're still taking all of our players with us. We're still taking our tracker, still taking our rooms. I like to take so it's kind of like the Russian doll idea too, to where I like to take the element and then open it up inside the node that I'm working with, rather than pulling up, like I already opened up name here, but I don't want that wire to go across. I'll just re-get that name if I use it down here, which I do. So yeah, so here we're kind of going on landing on location, and you guys can see, I'll let you guys go through this on your own time, but it's a whole bunch of if statements. Again, this one actually has 4. I've never done 4 before. So in jail rolls doubles, didn't have doubles. That's his UI said he wants to roll doubles, so he stays in. So my starting position was 40. My UI said roll dice. Dice 1 does not equal, that's this part right here, dice 2, and jail 1 equals 1. And this is my jail count. Right, so then you have where it doesn't equal 1, and now you're going to stay, and then if you use your jail free card, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense?
Yep. So Sean, we're at the top of the hour, and I know we're trying to be conscious of people's time. One of the questions people were asking is if you'll be sharing the script with others or not. Are you keeping this close to the
Yeah, no, this is, I really want to share it and get some input back. I think we're going to have some work to do, obviously, because of this error. But yeah, I want you guys to all explore it, and hopefully it's a way to kind of reverse engineer to help you learn Dynamo.
That's great. So, just in closing, first off, Sean, this is incredible. I think we might offline continue playing Monopoly for a little bit, because this would be awesome to do in Dynamo. But if anybody has any questions, thoughts, or comments about Dynamo, how they could implement it in their firm, you guys can check out evolvebim.com, hit us up. Love to chat about that, see if there's some opportunities there. Any closing thoughts or comments from the group or from Sean?
I learned a lot, Sean. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this was awesome. Like, incredibly, like a really fun way to learn Dynamo. Like, I learned a lot in this session. I think this is really, really good. freaking crushed it out on this. So really good job.
Yeah, I'd say being able to, put a lot of complex different ideas together to show, hey, here's a really comprehensive thing. We're taking things from Excel. We're doing a lot of if statements. We've got a lot of other different types of nodes that we're putting together to really make one cohesive thing happen. And it's just like any other project where it's not, one thing that we need to do or one Dynamo script that's going to put this all together. You've